that leads us into something that is the least surprising thing anyone could ever guess, and that's the Ubuntu Snap Desktop. Anybody
Oh,
who thought that wasn't going to happen, I don't know what rock you were sleeping under, but of course that was going to happen. Um, yeah, the Ubuntu Snap Desktop with the next LTS, I believe.
mm.
Yes, is that correct?
It's funny how that's all evolved over time.
Mm.
Like when I think the first time I heard of snaps
Mm-hmm.
was when it was announced to us. When was it? Hang on, I've got a timeline. Okay, so 2014.
Okay.
In October, most of the company flew out to Washington for one
Mm-hmm.
of our in-person sprints,
Mm-hmm.
and partway through, we had some community people there. This was in the time of Ubuntu Phone,
Okay.
so we had
Oh,
community
right.
people there developing apps for the phone. So we already had a second package manager called Click Packages on the phone, right?
Mm.
And so it wasn't unusual for us to create a new packaging system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there was a whole app store on the phone and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, we all got called into a room for a presentation,
Okay.
and the community people were told they're not allowed in the room because it was confidential. And
Right.
so we all walked in, and then we had to very embarrassingly boot the community people out of the room that we'd invited. Because this was all very secret. This is before any of the Snap stuff had been announced.
Right.
And Mark Shuttleworth was not in attendance, so he did a video call on a big screen where he talked about Ubuntu Core and Snappy. And initially, I didn't get it.
Right.
And the people who were already in the little group who knew about this, because there was a small group of people who were working on this project
Sure. Yeah, of
inside
course.
Canonical. And those who weren't working on it didn't know anything about it. Those people were super excited, like really, really excited. And they could see how this would be a way for us to be the operating system on routers, set-top boxes, all that kind of stuff, with reliable updates, over-the-air updates done easily and automatically, just like you want on a set-top box or a router. You just want it to be up to date, and appliance level stuff, right?
Yep.
And at that time, we weren't thinking about desktop. Desktop wasn't, it was when it was introduced to us, it was all about top of rack, switches, routers, all that kind of stuff. And it took a while before we started getting pushed to bring desktop applications to the ecosystem. And so,
when
and that
did
was
the desktop stuff start happening, if you remember?
So we started even before the phone was cancelled. So we had some of those Click packages. So if you think about all the apps that were on the phone, the calendar, the calculator, all of that kind of music app, we started making snaps of those.
Right.
And that was quite early on. So that would have been 2015, 2016, something like that.
Okay.
So at that time, there was no Snapcraft store as such. There wasn't like a storefront that you could browse, like if you go to Snapcraft.io.
Yep. Were snaps like available to the public at that point? Not yet. Was it still like an
I'm trying to
thing?
think when. Yeah, I mean, the Snapcraft store was February 2016, I think.
Okay, so it was still in that like internal getting everything sort of ready stage.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't fully formed,
right,
for sure. And most of the snaps were either servers or command line things, that kind of stuff.
Right.
If you go and have a look at archive.org and look at snapcraft.io from, I don't know, February 2016, something like that.
Okay.
There's a few little icons of the things that are in the store, and it wasn't a lot.
Okay.
And it wouldn't be a bunch of desktop applications that you recognize.
2016. Let's see.
And then 2017, Canonical downsized and cancelled the phone. And so that's when all the click stuff basically went away. Nobody was working on that, and everyone was moved across to work on snaps. And they formed the Snap advocacy team, which was a bunch of us who were tasked with getting more snaps in the store and getting adoption of snaps. And that was mostly people who used to be on the community team were moved across to be on the Snap advocacy team. And so we would generate lists and lists and lists of applications on our wish list that we wanted to have in the store. And some of that was we would then just build the snaps and put them in the store. And some of it was us going and contacting developers and saying, please, could you make a snap of this thing? And that took a lot of time and effort.
Before you go on further with that, I'm looking at it right now. The earliest of the archives, you've think Jenkins, HTOP, there's FreeCAD on here. And the website it tells you to go to explore the snaps is UApp Explorer.
Yes. So interestingly, Canonical have made app stores a few times.
Okay.
And in Ubuntu, back in 2010 and thereabouts, there was a desktop storefront called oh Christ, what was it called? Software Center. I think it was Ubuntu Software Center, right? And it was a thing. It was just like GNOME software. It was a graphical application, but it was designed in-house. Matthew Paul Thomas, MPT, designed it, and it was developed in-house, written in Python probably, and it interfaced to apt, and you could install applications. And it was when would that have been? I think that would have been before the phone or any of that. That would have been like 2010, something like that.
Okay.
And you could buy applications in there.
Okay.
And developers could submit their applications to go into the store. But these were debs. And this was a really tricky thing to do. Like if a developer who was like, I don't know, making a game or a simple application, Debian packaging is not straightforward. And so getting their application into the store so that someone could buy it, you had to get the packaging done, and Canonical might help you with that. But every time there was a new release of Ubuntu, that packaging had to be updated because of all the dependencies have changed and version numbers have changed. And if you ever wanted to release a new version of your application, you had to contact this application review board who would review it before allowing it into the store. There were a lot of humans in the mix. Although I say a lot of humans, there were like 5 humans.
There were humans in the mix, which is a lot.
There was at least a human in the mix, which was gated your application and would review your packaging. And sometimes you'd have to do this round trip multiple times before you got your thing in the store. None of this upload and then it's suddenly available everywhere, right? It was slow and painful, but you could buy things and people sold applications. They were debs, right? And that was before the phone was even announced, before the app store on the phone was even developed. And there was a web front end to that, so you could browse the storefront.
Okay.
But when the phone came along and the packaging system changed from debs to clicks, which were easier to create and didn't have to go through this manual process, but there wasn't a web front end to it. And so in the community, someone made UApp Explorer, which shows what's in the click store on the phone. And then later when snaps came along, they adjusted UApp Explorer because it was snaps are an iteration of a next generation of clicks, basically. And somewhat the people who made UApp Explorer modified it so that it could browse the click store and the snap store. Right. So that's kind of where that came from. And then eventually Canonical built a storefront internally. And so the use of UApp Explorer wasn't needed anymore. But that's the lineage of like Ubuntu Software Center with debs, the click store with clicks, and then the snap store with snaps.